Hi there. Welcome to a brand new edition of the Mastering GMAT series. My name is Anand Venkatesan. I'm the founder of mentorscapital.com. We're a mentorship and test preparation company, and we believe in connecting students with mentors. Our belief is that, well, if you can just ask the right questions from the right persons, better decisions will automatically flow from there. We'll get started with today's session. I'm going to discuss how to decode a typical sentence correction problem. This is video 2 in the series. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how to break down a sentence into various components, into figuring out its structure, right? And that usually is a good way of identifying parallelism errors and trying to correct them, right? All right, let's get started. uh, our problem for today is shown on your screen. If if you've not seen this problem before, just pause the video here, try the question yourself, and then come back, watch the video to find out how you can find the right answer. What's the process and approach to be taken, right? All right, let's get started with our discussion, right? So the first thing that you must do in any problem is to break down the sentence and find out what is the sentence structure, and that will help you identify its meaning, right? So let's try and do that. I'm going to look at option A because it's exactly the same as the original sentence. And one of the things that works with sentence structure to identify sentence structure is that if you find portions of the sentence enclosed within commas, it's most probably including a modifier. It's most probably a modifier, right? And so we look at this sentence and you'll notice right after Fahrenheit there's a comma, and then Jupiter's moon Europa has long been considered far too cold to support life, and this portion is enclosed within commas, right? And so that gives me a big clue, but that this is the modifier, and typically, sorry, this is the portion which might act as the modifier. At least I'm starting to imagine that. But actually, what happens here is that the first portion, that begins with a with, is the modifier, right? So with something somebody did something, right? Somebody or someone did something. So in this case, with surface temperatures estimated at minus 230 degrees, right? So ये modifier है, this describes or modifies what? Well, that's going to be the very next word in the sentence, right? And you notice that I have also crossed this, modifier out because that's the way you should think about a modifier. Well, find out if it's the correct one, but essentially ignore it and look at the remaining sentence for its exact meaning, right? So in this case, if I remove this, I'm going to still check, well, what does it modify? It modifies Europa, right? That's the noun. But it's not just Europa. This portion contains Jupiter's moon, which acts as an adjective. It describes Europa, right? So fair enough. So there's the noun described by, a modifier and an adjective. But essentially, the sentence talks about Europa. Europa has long been considered. This is clearly the verb, right? So something, Europa has been considering something. What has it been considering? Or what has it been considered as, right? Well, Europa has been considered as far too cold to support life. You'll notice that the as is missing, right? But you can do without it, right? You can do without that preposition here. So it has long been considered what? It has long been considered far too cold to support life, right? So this is like a acts as a noun, it acts as the predicate. So this is like a noun phrase that acts as the object to the sentence, right? So verb describes an action, doer of that action, well, Europa. What has been considered? Well, it has been considered. Europa has been considered. What has been considered as? Well, it has been considered as far too cold to support life. Okay, fair enough. This itself would be enough to make a valid sentence, but the sentence actually adds on, right? Puts a comma and adds on. And, well, that's a conjunction, right? Which means it's either going to be, combining two nouns or two clauses, right? So parallelism comes from there. The moment you spot a conjunction in a sentence, you should be like, whatever two things it's combining, they should both be in the same syntax. So in this case, my structure becomes, Europa has been considered A and B. And what is B here? Well, B here is not a noun, right? Because A is a noun, A is the predicate, far too cold, right? Actually, it's describing cold and describing its degree as far too cold, right? So that's like an adverb modifier attached to that noun. But in the second question, you don't have a noun because you have with 60 square miles of water, right? Well, water, or even 60 square miles is a noun, but with it mix this portion, this phrase as a modifier, right? And so this portion is a modifier. It describes something that comes before it. And in fact, because it's a noun modifier, it needs the noun which is in fact missing here. So there is a big parallelism error in the sentence, right? So the option A is obviously wrong. By looking up very quickly looking at the sentence structure, you can identify that the conjunction is there, but parallelism around it is incorrect. So I can eliminate option A. Let's move on to option B. The first part of the sentence is exactly the same. What are we talking about? We're talking about Jupiter's moon Europa has long been considered, so far the same, right? What has it been considered? It's been considered far too cold to support life. So far so good as well, right? And in fact, again, we can notice that this sentence is actually complete here, right? In A we had a conjunction, right? Here we don't have a conjunction, which means whatever comes after it will be like a modifier, right? It's also gives you a hint. It's as in something's, right? It's 60 square miles of water thought to be frozen from top to bottom, right? And so this would describe something in the sentence, clearly describes Europa, right? And so this portion acts as a modifier, right? And so with this structure, you're like, what does it mean? What does the sentence mean? Europa has long been considered too cold, well, far too cold to support life, in fact, but it's been considered too cold, and its 60 squares of mile of water are thought to be frozen from top to bottom. But that last portion is like an extra bit of information. So you're putting it as a modifier. You could actually strike it off, right? So that's probably a good way of imagining the sentence. That hey, if I remove it, is the remaining part of the sentence correct? Yes, it is, right? So I should think option B seems to be right. Let's quickly look at the other options, right? Again, in option C, the first portion of the sentence is the same, right? Jupiter's moon Europa has long been considered as far too cold to support life, right? And again, you can see that the predicate is coming with as. Do you need the as? Well, you don't need the as, but it doesn't make it incorrect, right? So far the sentence seems to be fine, right? Even with a preposition as, it seems to be correct. So it has been considered A, right? Or you could maybe say it has been considered as A and as B, right? So that should be the parallelism here, right? It has been considered as far too cold to support life and something else, right? Some other quality, right? Well, the other quality here is not really a quality. The other portion of the sentence is actually has 60 square miles of water, right? Which means that it begins with a verb and it's not, in fact, it's not a noun at all, right? So that's the problem, right? It's been considered as a something, well, but that thing is cold, right? Far too cold. And it's also been considered as something else. What is the something else? It's been considered as has 60 square miles of water. No, that definitely is not parallel to the first portion. So there is a parallelism error, which means option C is incorrect. Yeah. And the latter part of the sentence, which acts as a modifier, well, so be it. That doesn't really affect my judgment. C is still going to be wrong, right? Even in D, right, where Jupiter's moon Europa, the structure is changed slightly, right? The sentence is a little different now. Europa, long considered to be far too cold, right? Now remember, there is, you know, it directly starts with long considered to be, which means this portion is another modifier, right? So this also describes Europa. Something or someone is considered to be far too cold to support life, right? So which means that thing describes Europa, right? So this phrase describes Europa. I can again, sort of strike that off. We're still talking about Europa in the sentence, right? Besides the two descriptive modifiers, we can look at what is the sentence trying to say. Well, it's trying to say Jupiter's moon Europa and well, and what? And to have. Well, that just sounds too awkward, right? You can't make a sentence as Europa and to have, right? You could say Europa and Jupiter are found in a distant part of our galaxy, right? But the sentence should be indeed subject, verb, predicate, right? And here the subject is there, Europa, but there's no verb. And that's why, since the verb is missing, the sentence is incorrect. Okay? And if I look at option E again, Jupiter's moon Europa. Again, long considered too cold, which is, a noun modifier. I can strike that off. right? So Jupiter's moon, Europa, and its 60 square miles of water. So A and B, a compound noun, like two things, right? Well, there's the verb. Two things thought to be frozen from top to bottom. Well, that's still a modifier because it begins with the past participle form, right? Thought to be frozen from top to bottom. Well, well, if Europa and the second thing, which is water, are thought to be frozen from top to bottom, sure. But what is the sentence talking about? What is the verb being described in the sentence? You can't have Europa and three modifiers and two subjects and still be considered a valid sentence, right? So you can see that the moment I identify the sentence structure and I understand its meaning, what is the meaning here? The correct answer is B because it says that which temperatures, shooting to these levels, minus 230 degrees Fahrenheit, with that happening on Jupiter's moon. Well, Jupiter's moon has long been considered, as far too cold to support life, and it also has, its 60 square miles of water which are thought to be frozen, right? So the basic meaning conveyed is that Europa has been considered too cold to support life, and that two additional pieces of information are new, in the sentence. And the moment you identify the meaning, things become a lot simpler. And I hope that stays with you. That's the best way of approaching a sentence correction problem is to be able to break it down and identify the purpose of every portion of the sentence, right? Well, if you have any queries or if you have any suggestions, do write to us, right? That's our email address. That's the number you can use to contact us on WhatsApp, right? Also, do check out the link in the description. I'm gonna give away free tests, GMAT sentence correction and data sufficiency. So do follow the link and in the description to be able to access that. And one quick sort of word about my organization. We Mentors Capital believes in the power of mentorship. We believe that it can simplify all of these myriad tasks that you need to do that will help you get admission into a top university, in India or even abroad, right? And our services essentially start off with the very basic of test preparation, where we can help you prepare for the CAT, GRE, GMAT, TOEFL, SAT. But we can also help you write your application, right? Write the application essays, figure out any online assessments that are there, figure out letters of recommendations and even scholarships. And not just that, we can also go one step further and we can also help you shortlist schools, give you advice on which schools are good, which schools are not, which schools, should suit your candidates, your profile and your aspirations as well as your budget, right? So help you with program choice, country choice, selection, and finally shortlisting and applying to those universities, right? I hope you liked this video. I hope do click the like and subscribe button if you did like this video. But if you have any queries or suggestions, what you want me to cover, if you have any questions you'd like me to discuss, do send them to me. Do send it to me to the email address I just gave, and click on the link below for free practice tests. Right. That's my time. Thank you guys. Have a good day and hope to catch you guys again very very soon.